I want to talk about the Orlando Magic and where they are as a staff, record label, and mother effing crew. We saw the growth of one Paolo Banchero. I want to start with Raja. When you see a team, and I know they're kind of in your backyard in Orlando, a little bit up to I-95. When you see a team like this at this stage of their trajectory, I always ask you this around this time of the year. When you see a team at this stage of their trajectory, what is the most important thing that they need to figure out in this offseason? And what's the most important thing that you want to see from Paolo this offseason and going into next season?
Yeah, the most important thing is to continue to build, on the momentum and the success that you've seen early on, right? And that's from almost every perspective within the organization. So every individual player with their specific skill set and their ability to continue to improve. From a coaching perspective, he did a fantastic job, but you want to continue to, maybe tinker around the areas where defensively you were really, really sound, but then offensively, at times it could get a little stale. So maybe there's some things that you could work on from a front office and a team building perspective. You want to find some pieces. I think they need a PG. There are things that they need that you want to bring into the fold and into the mix, all at the same time without stunting the growth of Paolo at all. And so, you want to continue to build. You don't want any complacency to creep in because, you had a good showing in the playoffs and maybe nobody counted you in the mix this year. You want them to get the taste in their mouth for that level of success, for being in the postseason, and then want to be hungry enough to build on that.
And what have you seen from them, Howard, in this sense? Are they ahead of schedule? Or are they right where they need to be? What did you see from the Orlando Magic this season that would give you optimism if you were in Orlando?
They're definitely ahead of schedule, and I just mean, obviously since they got Banchero, that's the span we need to talk about. As an organization, we could say they're perpetually behind schedule because they just spent years and years of just treading water, doing nothing particularly interesting or creative or ambitious. That's a different discussion. This group with Banchero and Wagner has a lot of promise. Obviously, they've got youth and upside, and they're ahead of schedule in that. I mean, did you guys have them as a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference before the season started? Because I sure didn't. Figured they'd be a play-in team maybe, and then a low playoff seed who'd get spanked in the first round. And here it was. They got to a game 7 against, a pretty solid Cavs team, not a great Cavs team, but, Donovan Mitchell's got more playoff experience than probably both of those rosters combined. And it was a good showing. Like, there's nothing at all for the Magic to be hanging their heads about today. And Raja alluded to it. They need a point guard. They need some other stuff too. They need bench depth. They made their way this season by being a phenomenal defensive team, but they don't have a lot of offensive punch. And even Banchero as their main scorer is not the most highly efficient, 25 a game scorer in the league. So they could use a little better balance, and they definitely need a point guard. I don't know where that point guard's coming from, by the way, unless maybe it's the guy who just beat them. And I don't know what the Cavs are going to do this summer. I don't know if, we're perpetually talking about whether Donovan Mitchell's going to stay or go. And if he does stay, would if he signs an extension, does that mean you maybe put Darius Garland in play? Because I don't know about you guys, I still don't think that backcourt is the greatest pairing in the world. I think it makes sense to go with one or the other. So, but outside of that, there's not a lot out there. It's like Tyus Jones maybe, or you're not. I don't think you're going for a Russell Westbrook or a James Harden, or I'm trying to think of who else is free this summer. Like, they're not Spencer Dinwiddie. They don't fit what they're trying to accomplish or timeline. And so, but that's the challenge they have ahead of them. They need a point guard alone, I think would help get them to the next level.
How are teams gonna look at them next year, Raja? Because we've seen a recent example. I'm trying to fit apples and oranges here, but you've seen a recent example of a team catching the league by storm in the Sacramento Kings, where they catch them by surprise, and a lot of those wins, this season. I'm thinking about the Kings. I'm thinking about the Magic this season as well. A lot of those wins, come by surprise, and a lot of those wins come by you're playing harder than the opponent, and they're not expecting. They're expecting a night off. and you punch him in the face. It's not necessarily going to be like that next year. How does the Magic, how does their staff, how do their players adjust to the change in how they're going to be played next year?
The answer to that is the secret to success, and so why some teams have it and figure it out, and why some teams don't. You go from being, a hunter to being a hunted, and not to marginalize anything that Orlando did this year, but you are correct in that teams that don't see you over and over again, like in the Eastern Conference or like Western Conference teams, might not be as tapped in to like what you're doing and the successes that you're having. So you might catch them. Not that they don't think you're good or anything like that, but they might not realize just how tough you guys are and how well you defend and what you can do to them offensively. And so they might not have been as locked in as you would be for any other top 4 or 5 team in their respective conference, if that makes sense, right? And that's not to take anything away from what Orlando did, but next year you're not going to have that luxury. Next year you go from being a team that, to Howard's points, ahead of schedule since Paolo, to a team that, everyone says, hey, look, here's the game plan. Here's what they do. Here's what we have to take away. I need everybody to like, hey, look at me. And coaches snapping their fingers like, hey, pay attention. This isn't some bullshit. Like, they'll come in here and beat you. And, that level of attention, when teams give you that, it just changes the dynamic just a little bit. But that's why it's important for them to take the approach, that I was trying to say, a couple minutes ago, which is like, we haven't done anything. So while the league is going to maybe change the way they see us and hunt us, we have to stay in hunter mode. We have to stay hungry. We can't think that we've arrived in any way, shape, or form. Well, we haven't really done anything. And so we've got to keep that hungry, humble, physical, beat you up mindset, and then continue to grow in the other areas that will help us get over the hump.
I want to go back to you, Raja, because throughout this series, I think the world has seen how good Paolo can be. Now, he had 38, 16 in a closeout game, albeit wasn't the best shooting from the floor in Game 7, but he's garnered a lot of comparisons to people with his size and his inability to shoot. And we'll talk about player comparisons in the next segment and why I don't necessarily love them. But he has been getting to a point about how good he is to where he is starting to get compared. Like, does he have the potential to be one of the all-time greats? Who knows? What have you seen from his game specifically that would suggest that he is at one day ready to get to the next level? And where do you see his game maturing as he matriculates?
When he first came into the league, his body was already established in a way that was going to allow him to have an impact against other grown men. A lot of guys come into the league, especially in today's age of one and dones being as prevalent as they are. They come in and there's just work that has to be done from a physical standpoint before they can have the level of success, that they ultimately will in the NBA. He was already ready to go physically. Obviously, he was still growing, but like he was ready to take on the rigors of an NBA season. Skill set is good; needs to get more efficient for sure. But his mindset is what I look at in terms of like what you could potentially be, how you're wired up top. Do you shy away from the moment? Is it consistent? If things aren't going well, do you fold tent and we just chalk it up to like this isn't going to be a great night for me? And that's quite frankly what makes people like not be able to be stars. Their consistency. Stars figure out when they are inefficient how to come up with the 29. I'm not shooting great. I still had 30. Like we got, because the team has to have it. And so from a mindset perspective, I think he has a lot of good things going for him. And so in terms of overall growth, like any player, Howard had you have to find a way to be more consistent, shoot a higher percentage, be more efficient is probably the word that I'm looking for. And like any player, we want to continue to figure out how to make the others around us better. If we're going to be the best player on the floor, it's an all-encompassing job. So I've got to continue to get better in those regards too.
And the key to maximizing Paolo's trajectory is what the front office can do. And this leads me to my question from Howard. And my question would be, how much do you trust the Magic organizationally to put the right pieces around him. And that's not only on the team perspective, but that's also the front office perspective. Now, so far, you could say the Magic have done a decent job. You know, they got Mosley as the coach. They, you know, have rounded out the roster enough to, you know, be able to have a team like this, a defensive-minded team. How much do you trust the front office as it stands right now to be able to build a team that can consistently compete at this level and higher?
My perceptions of the Magic front office are kind of just colored by the fact that that organization, whether it was at the ownership level or the front office level, just spent a long, long time hanging on to that Vucevic era, whatever you want to call that, where it was perpetually chasing the 8th seed. Their ceiling was low. And it just didn't feel like a very ambitious organization, right? It didn't feel like a team that really wanted to risk tearing it down or make a swing for the fences move. They just this standing in place for way too long. But I don't want to judge them solely on that or talk about what they're doing next based on that, because it's one thing to hang on to like the outline of a semi-competent team versus now you've got a young team with great upside. This is a different situation. So I don't necessarily want to hold the recent past against them. But if they don't make a move this summer, guys, that's when I'm going to look at it and go like, maybe this is just what this organization is, a team that just kind of like meanders along and doesn't know when to hit the gas or when to slam on the brakes either. So like, this is a time to hit the gas. This is a time to like, could you go, we don't know what's going to happen in Atlanta with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Could you go get one of those guys? If they keep Trae Young, could you be in the DeJounte Murray sweepstakes? There's going to be a lot of teams that are probably going to chase both of those guys. But this is the time. You got a really nice young 1-2 punch and some great pieces. And Jalen Suggs had a breakout year as one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. Jonathan Isaac finally stayed healthy long enough to show what he can do. But you need some more offensive punch and playmaking. And it would be nice to also just have a veteran at that spot, at the playmaking spot at point guard with this young team. So I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying, you know, that there's an obvious answer here, but it's time. Hit the gas. That's what I want to see this summer.